Hello, my art tribe. Let's talk resin. Now, MAS Epoxy has a ton of different systems, but these are some of my favorite. Now, you know I love my flag system because I also, look, that's me and my little bottles that I have, but I love the flag system, which we're gonna talk a lot about the system because you can do so much with this. This is such a versatile resin, and this is my favorite, and that is my dog barking. I am so sorry. Now, we're going to talk about the flag system and how it comes separately than the hardeners, right? So you can use medium hardener, you can use slow hardener, but what's the difference and why can you use both with the flag system? We're going to get into it. Also, just for reference, these bottles of mine are the flag system with the medium hardener. It is just a smaller little kit size for you guys. You know, for those of you who want to just like test it out before committing to bigger bottles, and you guys will get a little face of me on there too. So let's get into this system first, but we're also going to talk about the tabletop, and you can see that the tabletop, almost all their resin from MAS Epoxy comes in a lot of different sizes, so you don't have to commit to big bottles at first. So that's another thing I love. We're also going to talk about the Art Pro, which is very similar to the tabletop. We're going to talk about the deep pour and what I use this for, the deep pour X specifically, because they have a regular deep pour as well. And then this is a resin that a lot of you know, artists like us that do crafting and molds and paintings and top coats, we don't use this, but this is for when we use and paint resin on wood surfaces. So this is a really, really great resin as well. So we're going to talk about it. Let's get into it. So why do I love the flag system? My favorite parts about the system and what I use it for. Now, the flag system, one of the main reasons that I love this is because it cures very quickly. Now, in about 2.5 hours, depending on what hardener you use, you can add another layer. So when I'm making my dominoes, I love using the flag system with the medium hardener. So on a day where it's not super, super cold, I can add a second layer maybe in about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. To be honest with you, in the summer when it's warmer in my studio, I can probably do that within an hour, which is amazing. Now, why the flag system besides it curing quickly? The flag system has a very low viscosity. Now, what is viscosity? Viscosity basically is the liquidness, the thickness of the resin, how easily it pours out, right? So if the flag system has a lot lower viscosity, which means it's very loose compared to other resins. Now, since your resin, the flag system, is a low viscosity, it holds less bubbles, which, hello, this is what we want as resin artists, right? Now, with the flag system, if you use the medium hardener, I would say you have about maybe 20 to 25 minutes to work with this system before it starts curing on you, before you can stop pouring it, right? Now, if you use the slow hardener, so the slow hardener with the flag system, that means we take the medium out. So you use one of these at a time. If you use the slow with the flag, you get a little bit more time than that. It's the same resin, same viscosity, but you get more time with the slow. So there is slow and there is medium. Now, there is also a fast hardener, but the fast hardener, because of its chemical composure, it has a very yellow tint to it. So the fast is also really great, and again, it cures very fast. You probably have 10 minutes to work with it or less. Now, if you use that, you're going to want to use a lot of pigments in that mixture of that resin to cover that color, but usually for the kind of items that we do, we don't really use that. Now, what is this little kit? I talked about it before, but it's basically the same as the flag and the medium. Now, this is let me show you. This is a 2-to-1 ratio, right? Usually with resins, like with a tabletop or any other resin, it's a 1-to-1, which means if you use 5 grams of part A, you're gonna put 5 grams of part B. Now, this is a 2-to-1. So if you use 10 grams of A, you're going to use 5 grams of one of the hardeners. Now, I will do another video where I talk about how to mix resins, how to use the MAS Epoxy calculator and all that good stuff. But let me show you some of the items and kind of like molds that you can use this system with. Now, of course, this resin is perfect for about a 1/4 inch pour. The domino molds are a perfect example. So you can use this resin for your dominoes. Now, I usually will do about half of this on one layer and then half for another. Now, you can fill the whole domino set at once for this kind of thickness, but just remember there are a lot of cavities here. So while this is curing, it's going to get warm and it's going to put more heat on your mold, and you're going to use your mold probably less times than you usually would because the heat kind of damages the mold. It's something normal that happens overall with all resins, so it's not just this system, but I would suggest for one of these molds kind of double layering it. So this is a great example, and let me show you some of the dominoes I've made. So for example, this is one of my last sets that I made, and you'll see here, and I'm sure you've seen the video, but there is 2 layers. So I will usually do a clear layer, put whatever additives, it doesn't have to be clear, whatever design you want to make, and then I will put a back coat on it or whatever else you need to do. But I can basically make these in a day because the flag system cures so quickly. Here is another wonderful example. Now this is a little tray mold, and you can see I used here the flag system. This was all 1 pour. I added glitters and pigments. It's a little eyelash tray for my friend, but see, this is a perfect example of kind of like the thickness and what you can use this resin for. You can also make these keychain molds, any kind of mold basically. See, this one right over here is a little bit too thick for me. This one I would definitely do 2 layers in. Now, what if you're making a cast like this? It's quite thick, and I didn't want to do this in layers. I used the Deep Pour X for this, which we're going to talk about, but if I added a bunch of Deep Pour and added my items in there, my items are going to float all the way around. So what I do is my first layer on the bottom is the flag system with the medium. I wait for it to harden just a little bit. It starts curing, and I will place all my items in this thicker mold that I want to make. Once that cures, I can go ahead and add the layers of the Deep Pour, and none of my items are going to move. So eventually over time, you'll learn that not only is the flag system good for molds, but if you want to do deeper casts, it is really amazing to use to hold down your items. So that's another way you can use this system. All right, friends, so since we were talking about the flag system with the Deep Pour, let's talk about that a little bit. Now, as I said before, in this mold, the bottom set that I put in, I used the flag system to hold my items down, and then I used the Deep Pour X. Now, MAS Epoxy has a regular Deep Pour and the Deep Pour X. The Deep Pour X can go up to 3 inches. The Deep Pour, regular Deep Pour, goes up to 1 inch. So this is why I love the Deep Pour X. Now, I never go up to 3 inches. I do like doing about 1 inch to 1.5 inches at a time, especially when I'm using flowers and such, which is basically what we usually use this for as artists that, you know, do flower preservations. If you put it too thick, the resin still gets really hot while it cures, so it can damage your flowers a little bit. So I suggest doing 1 inch at a time. But you can see here, I did basically 1, 2, 3 shots, and I was done. I know I need a, this is just from my mold, it's not from the resin. I overused it, and this is just for me, so ignore that. I said earlier that the flag system has a very low viscosity. The Deep Pour has way looser of a viscosity. It's basically almost water. It holds 0 bubbles. This is why I love this system for these kind of crafts and items, right? Now, this even degasses itself. The reason why I don't use Deep Pours for shallow molds is because it does take a long time to cure. So each layer that I do, I have to wait about maybe 2 days before I could pour the next layer. The reason being is this resin is meant to be used for river tables, so really big projects, and when you use it in a bigger amount, it cures quicker, but you know, we can use it for items like this as well. I'm going to show you another project where I did a bridal bouquet preservation. So I want you to see how beautifully clear this block is. It is absolute perfection. Now let's talk about this. Once again, the bottom layer on here, flag system to hold the flowers down. Once that cured, I did a few layers of the Deep Pour. But once it's done, the Deep Pour is not meant to have, it's not a top coat. So the Deep Pour is not meant to be a top coat. So once I unmold this, same as here, you'll see that it's a little bit domed right over here. I don't know if you can see that. Just a slight bit. And this top is actually the tabletop. Now, tabletop is used for top coats. So let's get into that next. Now, the tabletop is on the thicker side of the MAS Epoxy resins. Now, this is the perfect resin for all of your top coats. It's clear, it's shiny, it's strong, it's scratch resistant. It is amazing. It is one of my favorites. You could see how kind of thick it is. Now, what do we use this for? Can you use this in mold? Absolutely, you can. Now, the only thing about this, because it is thicker, you do have to make sure that you you mix your resin a lot slower, and this can hold more bubbles than the flag system, but it is an incredible resin. You can absolutely use it in molds, for coasters, for dominoes. You absolutely can do that. You just have to, master mixing your resin without bubbles, right? So this is incredible, and we use this for top coats, but let's talk about the tabletop also with the flag system on paintings. Now, see that painting I did over there? All of the layers on there are all flag system because I did so many layers. I have the background, I have all the squares in different layers, all the alcohol ink, the stripes, the gold. They're all different layers. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to work through this fast. I don't want to wait a whole 24 hours before I could put the next layer on. Now, that's why I use all of the flag system with the medium hardener for all my layers. But my top coat, after I finish the entire painting, my absolute top coat is the tabletop. You always want to finish your paintings, your tables, anything you create on canvas or wood, you want to end it up with the tabletop. Now, the reason we don't use the tabletop to put any top coat on, let's say, for example, dominoes, is because your cast with the flag is coming out of a mold, and your mold is super shiny on the inside. So when you take it out, you do not need to do a top coat. Now, but when you're doing layers like this, you're gonna use your torch, you're gonna do your alcohol spray, whatever you want to get rid of bubbles. So on top of that, it kind of will leave a little bit of a definition. So you always want to end it with a tabletop. Now, what if you want to use your tabletop for top coats on your casts, on your paintings, but you want a little bit more time? Now, with the tabletop, I think you can work maybe about 30 to 40 minutes before it starts curing on you. Now, if you use the MAS Epoxy Art Pro, you get a 60-minute work time. You can work up to an entire hour before your resin starts heating and curing and exotherming or whatever happens, right? So the Art Pro and the tabletop are very, very similar, besides the fact that the Art Pro is a very slight looser viscosity than the tabletop. The Art Pro also has UV protection, which is incredible. So it protects your paintings from getting yellow, and you get the extra working time. So these two products are very, very similar, but with this one, you get a lot more working time. So for those of you who are beginners or need a little bit more time working, this is what we're gonna go with. Now, also one more thing with the tabletop and the Art Pro. I am not an ocean artist. I don't do a lot of ocean art, but when artists use the MAS Epoxies to do their ocean and their lacing with their white pigment that goes out, usually people use the tabletop. It is the perfect consistency to hold your cells. Now, if you want to use the Art Pro to do your lacing, you absolutely can as well. But once you pour and mix your resin, you need to wait maybe at least 30 to 40 minutes before you start blowing out your lacing. Because this resin takes a lot longer to cure than the tabletop, you can lose some of your cells when you use the Art Pro. But you still can, you just have to wait for it to start setting before you kind of push your lacing out. Our last little epoxy that we're going to talk about. Now, this is a penetrating epoxy, right? This is also a 2-to-1. They usually come in small bottles. This is literally water. It is super, super, super thin viscosity. What is this used for? Let's say you're using a raw piece of slab to make a table, to do any kind of art piece. What happens is if you just pour any of the resins you choose to use, the wood is going to absorb that resin and it's going to push out air bubbles, and it's going to be a mess. It's very difficult to control at that point. Now, what does this do? What you do with this is once you mix it, you pour it on your wood slab, on your raw wood piece, and you kind of really massage it in to the wood. It absorbs it, and it's so thin that it cures, right? So once that cures in your wood, you can do whatever layer you want to do on top, and it's going to be perfectly fine. No air bubbles are going to come out of the wood. So basically, it's kind of sealing your wood before you do your resin. All right, my lovely subscribers, I love you guys so much. I hope this was helpful. Drop all your questions in the comments. I will answer all of them.